This is Recipe for Sleep, a podcast where we dust off very old cookbooks and let them lull us into dreamland. I'm Erin Brindley, a chef and storyteller. Tonight we're returning to the 4th edition of The American Pastry Cook, published in 1894, and I couldn't be more delighted to open these pages again. We first visited the book in episode 19, and it was my favorite so far. And by the numbers, yours as well, despite the fact that we didn't even get to the actual book, but just the edition notes. We are still reading from the ample edition notes, and I just love them. Our author, Jessup Whitehead, is primarily responding to letters and questions the earlier editions inspired. When his method for making tortillas is questioned for its authenticity, Whitehead wisely turns the mic over to another chef, who, with a reverence refreshing even for modern times, describes with deep appreciation the differences between the Mexican kitchens of the day and the average American one, having lived in Mexico for many years. Letters asking for specific recipes, not included in the original editions, are met obligingly but with a dash of salt. I find it somehow comforting that professional chefs were just as culturally curious and personally acerbic over a century ago as the best ones are now. Before I begin to read you this old cookbook until you drift off to sleep, I want to thank you for inviting me into your ears. I really love making this sweet little podcast, and I know the only way people keep finding it is that you tell them about it. So thank you. And now, put away anything you were doing and snuggle deep into your sweet covers. Imagine the kitchen of your mind. There are 2 cupboards there. Yesterday's cupboard, for all the things that have already happened that your mind wants to chew on. And tomorrow's cupboard, for all the things you're going to do or what's going to happen later. It's time to put everything away in those cupboards. Imagine closing each one. You made it to this cozy, quiet time of day where there's nothing to do but listen to me read you more of Jessup Whitehead's introduction to the 4th edition of The American Pastry Cook. Notes to the 4th edition. Tortillas. It would be most gratifying to me if these books should grow to be so comprehensively American as to include the best of the cookery of all the various people on the continent. To learn all that is characteristic in the cookery of Mexico, without departing from my rule of never putting anything into a book that I have not previously performed myself by the measures and directions given, I should have to go through the experience of a correspondent, a former Chicago chef, and visit the principal cities of that country. He says, in looking over your American Pastry Cook, I particularly noticed number 626, tortillas, which I find is a mistake. I have spent the last 2 years in Old Mexico, most of the time as a proprietor of the eating house at San Juan del Rio, about 125 miles from the city of Mexico, and have seen tortillas made in all the principal cities in Mexico, and at no place do they use cornmeal or boiling water, as there is not, nor never has been, such a thing as cornmeal in Mexico, only such as came from the United States to Americans located there. The way they do make tortillas is as follows. Corn is soaked in water 24 hours. Then it is laid on a rock and rubbed with another rock shaped something like a rolling pin, till it forms a paste. Then it is made into a flat cake, like a hotel pancake, only thin as a wafer, which are made by being patted between the hands of the proper size, then are baked on hot coals. As proof of the above recipe, I refer you to anyone in Mexico. My friend Al Rutherford is right, of course. Still, my Mexican said just what is printed about him. Knowing that a tortilla is a corn cake, he was content to call a corn cake a tortilla without caring much about the different method of making. Here is a still more particular description, written by Fanny Brigham Ward in the Springfield Republican. A Mexican kitchen is a study, and to do it and all its queer utensils justice would require a column's space. There are no cooking stoves in Mexico, or even anything like the fireplaces of our grandmother's days. One side of the room was occupied by a sort of shelf, built into the wall, about breast high, in the center of which a small wood fire is kept burning. There is no wood here which a New England housewife would consider fit to burn. Only gnarled and twisted branches of mountain trees, and around a little heap of these earthen cooking pots are ranged. If the family is small, sometimes this smoky process is improved upon by building a charcoal fire in a large earthen pot and setting the smaller cooking vessels within it. In many houses, a mud oven is built at one end of this shelf, or somewhere out of doors. To heat the oven, a fire must be built inside of it, and the entrance closed with a hot stone. However, as baked food, pies and things, according to the Englishman's advertisement, enter not into the household economy, an oven is altogether a superfluous luxury. In the center of the kitchen stands its most important factor, the metate, for tortilla making. It is a hollowed stone the size of an ordinary bread bowl, having 2 stone legs about 6 inches high at one end, which inclines it at an angle of 45 degrees. The tortilla maker kneels on the dirt floor at the elevated end of the metate, and, the corn having been previously boiled in weak lye and still quite wet, she crushes it into a paste with a stone rolling pin, the mixture gradually sliding down the inclined plane into a dish placed to receive it. When a quantity has been thus crushed, it is rolled into balls and left until required. It is astonishing what an amount of corn a family of ordinary size will consume in a day in the form of tortillas, the Mexican staff of life. When a meal is on the tapis, the last act in the drama, the tragedy, we feel inclined to say, when suffering the afterpangs of indigestion, is to heat the griddle, or more commonly, a smooth, flat stone. Then the cook takes a very small lump at once of the prepared corn paste and shapes it into thin, round cakes with a little water and much loud spatting of the hands. The cakes are then baked brown in a jiffy, and as a substitute for bread, one might go further and fare a great deal worse than subsist on tortillas. Whatever else the American housekeepers may find worthy of imitation in Mexican methods, I am sure that dishwashing, as that disagreeable duty is practiced here, will not be one of them. The Mexican dishwasher does not bother with the table, and thereby saves her arms from scrubbing and her legs from standing, but seats herself serenely on the floor beside a pail of hot or cold water. She has no soap, but sliced amole root makes strong and cleaner suds, and in lieu of a dishcloth, she uses a tiny broom brush like our smallest whisk brushes. The only disagreeable suggestion about it is that these dish brooms are exactly like those used to brush hair, from the head of the family down to that of the humblest criado. There are few combs used in Mexico, and the fear will intrude that those brooms may sometimes get mixed, like Buttercup's babies. The dishes are never wiped, but turned up to dry, sometimes in a tray or on an adobe shelf, but generally on the hard dirt floor leaned against the wall. Strange to say, they always come to the table clean and shining. The brass spoons and steel-bladed knives are kept bright enough to see your face in, though no bath bricks or patent soaps are employed in their polishing. Nothing but pure, unadulterated dirt. The servant, whose duty it is to take them out of doors, kneels upon the ground, digs up a little fresh earth, and holding the knife or spoon firmly on a stone, polishes at her leisure. Despite dirt floors and the absence of all those conveniences which we consider indispensable, I have never yet seen an untidy kitchen in Mexico. Everything is kept bright and fresh, as hands and a mole can make it, even to the cooking pottery, which is of necessity smoked black whenever used. A correspondent having experience of life in Mexican hotels says the first thing to be done while there, according to the custom of the country, is to take coffee, and if by any series of howls and poundings you can attract the attention of a servant, there being no bells, the universal light morning repast, called desayuno, will be served in your room without extra charge. Nothing more substantial can be had for love or money before noon. It consists of a small loaf of Mexican bread resembling a cannonball, minus butter, accompanied by only a small cup of coffee or chocolate. Should you be so unreasonable as to require a couple of eggs, they may be obtained for a small consideration from the astonished host, who marvels within himself at the greediness of los Americanos. Sherbets. In regard to disputes which spring up touching the propriety of the names of certain compounds, it is necessary to take into consideration that the English, French, and Americans, too, have in many cases taken up a foreign name and applied it to something slightly like the foreign original, but so changed to suit their own fancies that the foreigners would not recognize it. The real Turkish sherbet is nothing but fruit juice and water, only mixed with sugar, when the acidity of the fruit makes it requisite. Turkish lemon sherbet is simply lemonade, and all other fruits are used the same way. What we call water ices are the real sherbets frozen. Both names are proper for them, and there is no room for a dispute. On the other hand, the French apply the name sorbet to sherbets which have liquors added to them. Sorbet au kirsch is a Kirschwasser punch, frozen, and so on through the list of punches. It is easy, therefore, to find authority for almost anything in this line of goods with changeable names, for there is no ultimate authority at present to refer to. The popular understanding of the meaning of a term establishes it in each different country. Ice cups and compound ices. The many friends who have assured me that they found this book a perfect mine of good things will not now, I am sure, suspect me of undue egotism when I assert that the number of compound ices have never been surpassed in points of luxury or ornament, and if used in connection with the ice cups, number 118, they afford specialties for any occasion of which one may be proud. These ice cups have been adopted by some experts in London as a new thing, and a few bills of fare of fine hotels in this country have ice cups called by the name of the hotel. I wish all my readers to get the full benefit of all the recipes that have been perfected for them with an amount of experimental labor that might seem to them incredible if told. Cooking in the mountains. When I first went to work in a very elevated town in the Rocky Mountains, at over 10,000 feet above sea level, I shared in the common surprise and perplexity of all novices in that region of finding that many old recipes wouldn't work, and times and durations of cooking processes were somehow disarranged. Without wishing to encourage the telling of marvelous stories about small variations, it has to be conceded that it is more difficult to cook vegetables well done and to boil beef tender there than at the common levels, and the most difficulty was found in making good cake. All the customary cake mixtures were too rich. They were all too light, and after rising too much in the oven, the cakes invariably went down again, dark and sticky. Some of the cakes directed to be made with ammonia or baking powder, or with whipped whites of eggs to make them light, would rise and run over. But if those rising materials were left out, the cakes came out just right and light enough. Still, that did not meet the difficulty in many cases. People to whom I tell it, but who have never experimented for themselves, do not want to believe that it was the sugar that needed to be changed in proportions. They will stiffen the cake with more flour, or reduce the butter or eggs. But after testing it thoroughly, I found that by leaving out a quarter of the sugar, good cake could be made at the highest point inhabited by man. The cakes were not as sweet and rich, of course, as if made by the full-pound recipes, but they could be relied on to be good in all other respects. Most of the cake recipes in this book are constructed on the knowledge that sugar in excess causes the most failures in cake baking, and 14 ounces are named instead of a pound. But at the level of the sea, the full pound can be used if wished. It is useful to know which of the ingredients causes the trouble when there are any. Gaufres, waffles, and wafer cases. In reply to requests for further information about the copper patty case fryer shown on page 59, it should be bent over so as to hang on the edge of the saucepan of lard and rest there without holding. The copper head need not be solid, but is better if hollow. At the New Orleans Exposition, some waffle bakers had a booth where they fried a crisp sort of waffle or wafer, as is described on page 59 for cases, having their waffle irons or coppers as large as a saucer, shaped indeed like a round border mold, such as is shown on page 76, and having long handles bent over to rest on the edge of the frying kettle. They dipped the irons in cake batter, let them fry in hot fat, and took off the wafer when done, and dusted it with powdered sugar. The price they put upon their waffle irons was $15 per pair, but offered to sell to hotels at $10. It is not known how low they would really have sold them if anyone had really wanted to buy. The cook who cannot obtain these utensils can get along very well for small cases by merely dipping common tin patty pans of any shape in batter, the outsides only, dropping them in a kettle of hot lard, and letting fry till light, brown, and crisp. Take off the shell of batter and dip the patty pans again. New pudding material. Cerealine is a new starchy substance made of Indian corn. A strong effort has been made to introduce it to general use, and much money spent on advertising, but with doubtful success. The article is good, but so much like cornstarch and so little better than any of the other pudding materials that nobody feels the need of it. It is, in the packages, precisely like the white, mealy part of popped corn. It cooks quickly like a starch, and can be used in the same way as starch, farina, and cornmeal. Manioca is another article, not new, yet but little known, which is one of the most desirable pudding materials. It is a fine tapioca, and not fine rice, and makes the most delicate of puddings, used in the same manner as sago and pearl tapioca. A few corrections and substitutions of new or improved recipes for old ones have been made for this edition. I have been careful, however, not to change or disturb any of the special features of the book, which have been the means of bringing me so many kind and enthusiastic letters. An invitation. All cooks, pastry cooks, confectioners, and bakers who execute ornamental pieces, which they would like to preserve in a picture, are respectfully invited to send photographs of them to me to be engraved and inserted in the next edition of whichever of these books shall be reissued first thereafter. My latest published book, Cooking for Profit, contains a department for artistic cookery, in which are pictures of 2 prized pieces, one of which took first prize at the French Cooks Exhibition in Paris, the other won a gold medal in London. It seems unfortunate that all of the fine pieces exhibited by cooks at their annual banquets in New York and other cities, and all of the elaborate work done for public and private parties, so little is ever seen by those outside who could best appreciate its artistic merits. It is earnestly desired that a collection of pictures of such work may be made, and as new issues of these books are made at least once a year, it affords an opportunity to the artists to place their work in a permanent form, to be a source of interest to many readers and of pride to themselves. Wanted. A substitute. A man in B, Illinois, said recently he would pay me $150 if I could show him how to make ice cream without using cream that would be as good as real cream and that it would beat up as well. He did not make the offer to me direct, but a young man from Iowa, a strong partisan of my books, who told him that he could get the information in the American Pastry Cook at a much lower price. The man of B did not want it that way, however, but wanted to pay $150 for some reason or another, and my young man ought to have been bolder, stayed with him, shown him how, and collected the money on the spot. But he hesitated and referred the matter to me. Undoubtedly, the B man is quite right. He is in the ice cream business, and the knowledge he seeks will be worth $150, and he ought to pay it. And if he is a man of his word, after he has read this article and tried my directions, he may please send his $150 right straight to the office, where I will duly acknowledge the receipt with the customary thanks, and a hope to receive further favors. It will be supposed that a man who is anxious to pay $150 for a substitute for cream has no motive but to use a cheap imitation instead of the dearer, genuine article. But as he is to pay me such a respectable fee, he shall be defended against such an imputation. He cannot get enough real cream for the requirements of his business. What he does get is not uniformly good. Some of it is just on the point of turning sour when it comes. Some, having been kept too long, has a flavor of moldiness. The larger part is so thin that he can hardly tell it from new milk. This is always the way with the products of nature. They lack uniformity and are subject to great variations of quality and appearance. On the other hand, the products of art are always under control of the artist, who can make them always alike or vary them at pleasure. Cooks can make artificial cream. Therefore, they are artists. The bee man wants to be an artist and offers $150. Besides that, to freeze real cream is the lazy man's way. Anybody can pour cream cold into the freezer, if they can only get the cream, with the requisite amount of sugar and flavoring, and freeze it with such ease as to hardly miss the time. But to make artificial cream requires one to be industrious, and industry is always praiseworthy. The bee man wants to know the industrious way and says he will pay $150. Here it is. To make 4 gallons of artificial cream, which will be 6 gallons of ice cream after freezing, take 4 gallons of new milk, 7 pounds of granulated sugar, 3/4 pound of cornstarch, 24 yolks of eggs. Set half the milk over the fire to boil with all the sugar in it. Mix the starch in a pan with a quart of the remaining cold milk. Then drop in the raw yolks and beat to mix. When the milk on the fire boils, pour about a quart of it into the starch and egg mixture. Then turn these into the boiling milk and at once remove the kettle from the fire, for the heat is sufficient to cook the starch and eggs. Add the cold milk and strain into the freezer. It is required that our artificial cream shall beat up as well as real cream, that is, become light and foamy, increase in volume, and fill the freezer. This it will do perfectly, when only lightly cooked, as above directed. The boiling milk cooks the starch, and half cooks the yolks, so that they beat up by the motion of the freezer as light as sponge cake. But to beat up this or any other cream requires rapid motion. It is most perfect where the freezer is run by steam power. Otherwise, the old-fashioned paddle should be used to finish. And when the artificial cream is so beaten up light, it cannot be known from real cream. That is, from good fresh cream that is neither sour nor moldy. And if the two are tried together, it will generally receive the preference by the taste alone. If that is not enough, and something that will beat up better than cream be wanted, then take the whites of the eggs, beat them up stiff when the cream is nearly frozen, and mix them in, and continue beating and freezing, and the cream will raise the lid presently and foam all over. Please remit. To be tried. It has been imparted to me as a secret worth knowing that a particularly delicious ice cream can be made of new milk, which has rennet mixed with it, as if it were to be made into cheese, but it is not allowed to become thoroughly curdled. Somebody wanting a specialty in ice cream should try it. Something about milk and rennet can be found in this book, in connection with English cheese cakes and cream curd puddings. About prepared almond paste. It is a pity to have to say it, but the ready prepared almond paste, which can be bought in tin cans at about 25 cents per pound, and makes such delicious macaroons, almond icing, and almond ice cream, has been unfavorably mentioned by the chemists as being adulterated with prussic acid, which is a poison. However, it is the same poisonous prussic acid which gives the flavor to such fruits as the peach, apricot, cherry, and plum. Its flavor is strongest in peach kernels, yet these are never known to injure anybody, the quantity of the drug being too small to have any hurtful effect. It is prussic acid which gives the bitter flavor to peach leaves, laurel leaves, and the bay leaves, which are so much used for seasoning. Almond paste, if used at all, should be used sparingly, and not with the excess which some pastry cooks practice because they find almond ice cream is a great favorite. Buyers of almond paste should deal only with reputable manufacturers. It is made, when genuine, of a mixture of sweet and bitter almonds, and is not hurtful, but cannot be so low priced as an imitation flavored with drugs. To use almond paste, shave it off the lump thinly, mix the shavings with granulated sugar, and roll them together on the slab or table until the paste is thoroughly divided amongst the sugar. Then use the sugar to make what is wanted. Another plum pudding. This receipt makes one good-sized pudding. Take 1/2 pound of breadcrumbs, 1/2 pound of flour, 1/2 pound of beef suet, chopped very fine, 2 ounces of sweet almonds, cut in fillets, 1 pound of currants, 1 pound of raisins, stoned, 8 ounces of lemon peel cut in thin strips, 2 ounces of citron peel, 4 ounces of brown raw sugar, the zest and juice of 1 lemon. Mix well together with 8 eggs and a wineglass of brandy. Boil 6 hours and hang up in the larder till required. Then boil up again for 2 or 3 hours. An hour or 2 will in no way injure a good plum pudding, and always serve very hot, with brandy or rum sauce, as the case may be. Baker's Cheap Cupcakes. 4 pounds butter, 6 pounds sugar, 32 eggs, 2 quarts milk, 2 quarts water, 4 ounces ammonia, 12 pounds flour, or enough to make dough a little thinner than pound cake. Mix like a pound cake, adding the milk and water after the eggs, and flour and ammonia or powder last. Weigh off 3-ounce cakes in small molds. Baker's Lady Fingers. 1 pound sugar, 10 eggs, 1 pound flour. Beat the eggs, not separated, and the sugar together for a half an hour. Stir in the flour lightly. Directions for forming and baking will be found in this book. This is a harder, less delicate, and more serviceable kind than the receipts in the following pages. Why these notes are written. As fast as any new things come up, or any old and well-known thing is newly found out to be specially good for hotel use, I try to get it into these books as new editions are being printed. The following letter will please some readers and pleases me because it shows up what I have always contended for, that it is better to have a few special good things that everybody likes than to have 100 or 1,000 faraway, strange dishes that nobody appreciates. This friend wanted popovers, worse than he wanted the whole book besides. And expense is no object when a man wants a specialty. This receipt can be found in Cooking for Profit and the new edition of Family Cookbook, in one of which the man from Ohio had it, and now it is in this volume also. Kansas, December 9th, 1887. Mr. J. Whitehead. Dear Sir, about 1 month ago, I sent for one of your pastry cookbooks to find out of what and how to make the so-called popovers. They are a batter with eggs and baked in a pudding cup about 3 inches high. When baked, they crack open and are hollow in center and brown in color. Some Ohio man has made them here and are very often called for. It is not in the American Pastry Book, or if so, I cannot find it. If you understand what I mean, please let me know at once, and if extra charges, send it COD by Express. Yours truly, C. N.B. Please attend at once. Popovers or German puffs. These puffs are among the culinary curiosities, as they have neither powder nor any other raising material in them, yet they rise high above the tops of the cups and become quite hollow if not spoiled by too much flour. Good, rich milk should be used to make them. The batter may be kept an hour or 2 after mixing, and little batches of puffs baked fresh as wanted, and the last will be as good as the first. 2 eggs, 1 pint of milk, or 2 cups, 10 ounces of flour, or 2 slightly rounded cups, salt, a small teaspoonful. Break the eggs into a bowl, beat them light, and keep adding milk while beating. That takes about 5 minutes. Add the salt, then the flour all at once, and beat it smooth like a cream. Bake in cups or deep muffin pans well buttered, and only half fill them with the batter. Bake in a moderate oven about half an hour. Scotch slices. This favorite kind of cake, and likewise aniseed slices, caraway slices, and other names given by different bakers, are all made of Scotch shortbread as follows: 1 pound of flour, ½ pound of butter, ½ pound of sugar, 2 eggs. Rub the butter into the flour. Stir the eggs and the sugar until it is partly dissolved. Mix all together. It makes dough that can be rolled out and will be a trifle lighter for not being kneaded too much. To make Scotch or caraway slices, mix in a tablespoon or 2 of caraway seeds. For aniseed slices, use aniseed. For German slices, use coriander seed. Roll the dough into a long roll, place on the baking pan, and flatten it down to about 1 inch thick. Bake with a dredging of sugar on top. When baked, cut off slices as if from a loaf and serve with other kinds in the cake baskets. L.E.B. Ogdensburg writes, "Can you tell me what use to make of a surplus yolks of eggs? You do not mention but one kind of cake made with yolks. I am employed in a fine bakery or confectionery, and sometimes have several quarts of yolks left over in a week, and have to throw them away spoiled." Answer: If you were doing hotel work, you would find, on the contrary, the whites would be left over, there being so many more uses for yolks. The yolk contains all the richness of the egg, and gives color, flavor, and smoothness to puddings, cream custards, and sweet sauces, better alone than with the whites mixed in. We use the yolks also in fish sauces, salad dressings, in potato and other croquettes, also minced for an ornamental garnish, mixed with flour for noodles, and with batter for another kind of soup. Also thicken soups with them instead of flour or starch, and steam yolks in bulk like a cake, then cut up, and use them as we would chicken meat for patties. We rub cooked yolks through a sieve, making a sort of vermicelli, to serve with some dish, and we drop them whole also into soup, to substitute turtle eggs. We cut them up and mix with chicken meat, mushrooms, and sauce to fill the shells of fried bread with, and if there are any raw yolks left over after that, we mix them in waffle batter. In a good bakery, you will find nearly as many uses for this, the best part of the egg, no matter how many may be left over, from your using the whites in meringues, macaroons, icing, etc. For the yolks may be mixed with water and used the same as whole eggs. Take a pint measure, about 2/3 full of yolks. Fill it up with water and you have a pint of eggs, which is a pound or equal to 10 eggs, and the mixture of the yolks and water can be used in making almost any sort of cake. The only difference observable being that they are yellower and richer than if whole eggs are employed. In this way, you can utilize the yolks in all sorts of small cakes, in French coffee cakes, buns, rusks, tea cakes, and in the sorts of sponge cakes and jelly rolls, which are made light with powder instead of whipped whites. If you make ice creams, they alone, that is, the fancy kinds, should use up all that material you can have to spare. And another good purpose to put surplus egg yolks to is to mix them with lemon or orange syrup and a little butter and stir the mixture over the fire until it thickens into a jam, all very good to fill tartlets. If after that any yolks remain on hand, put them in the lemon and pumpkin pies. Sweet dreams.